Hello everybody, welcome to today's webinar. We're delighted you can join us for another one in the series of webinars that Vistatec has been hosting with global partners around the world. If you are familiar with these webinars, you'll know that we've already hosted many webinars with Visa, with Microsoft, with OpenJaw Technologies, with CA, with Box, with Tranquini, and today we're absolutely delighted to be joined with a company called Words at Work, where your hosts today are going to be Mark Derks, who is the partner and chief marketing officer at Words at Work. Mark has spent 21 years of his career at C.H. Robinson, where he was the director of global marketing. And between his experience throughout his global marketing career, and of course as a partner and the chief marketing officer at Words at Work, we're delighted Mark can join us to share some of his insights and wisdom around the whole topic of global branding and how global brands translate. So we're really looking forward to this. Mark's joined today by his co-host, who is our very own Aoife Murphy. Aoife is the Major Accounts Director here at Vistatec, and she'll also be taking you through this webinar today. Just to let you know, we do have an opportunity for you to ask questions as we go. If you're familiar with the GoToWebinar software, typically on your control panel, which is normally found to the right-hand side of your screen, about halfway down there's a little button that says questions. If you hit this drop down, you can type in a question at any stage during today's webinar, and we will endeavour to answer it for you. We try to hold the questions until the end, but please feel free, and we do encourage you to ask questions using the question software in GoToWebinar, and we will endeavour to answer them at the end where we will be holding a Q&A session. If we run out of time today and we can't get through everybody's question, we will certainly endeavour to answer everybody individually after the webinar has finished. Finally, just wanted to let you know that as normal, we will be recording this webinar, so a full copy of the video, the slides and the audio will be available to everybody who is here with us live today, and we thank you for joining us live today, and also for everybody who has registered and who will be receiving a copy of the recording. So we hope you enjoy today's topic. We've got a lot to get through, so I'm going to hand over now to both Mark and first of all to Aoife, who can tell you all about today's webinar and global branding. Aoife, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Hello, everyone. You're very welcome to today's webinar. So before we get started into the webinar itself and introducing our guest speaker, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Vistatec, just to have the Vistatec advert out of the way, so to speak. So Vistatec has been providing global content solutions to organizations worldwide for nearly 20 years, in fact, for over 20 years at this stage. We have built a reputation around our business and technology solutions that accelerate global commercial success for our customers. We understand that global content enables engagement, and so we match content and its desired impact with an effective localization methodology so that the intended experience and outcome is consistent and predictable regardless of language or locale. And now I would like to introduce you to our guest speaker, Mark Derks. I'm really looking forward to hearing from Mark and his practitioner's perspective on how brands translate. Mark, we're delighted to have you here today to speak with us. You're very welcome. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Words at Work?
Yes, and hello everyone. Thank you, Simon and Aoife, for that nice introduction, and thank you everyone for joining today's discussion. So as you've heard, my name is Mark Derks, and I'm a partner and the CMO of a global marketing agency called Words at Work. We're located in Minneapolis, Minnesota in the United States. And I've had the opportunity to work with global brands for more than 25 years of my career, most recently, as noted, with logistics giant C.H. Robinson worldwide. And I'm excited to share some of my experience and the insights that I've gleaned along the way, and talk with you all on this concept of how global brands translate to various regions of the world. And I'm looking forward to the discussion with Aoife on our thoughts around global brand strategy, how you can position your brand to engage customers locally, how brand messaging plays a key role in customer engagement, and how you might think about structuring your global marketing operation to maximize your brand efforts. So to get us started, maybe just a little bit on Words at Work and our authority on global brands and global marketing. So I think actually we're one slide back, Aoife. Yeah, so Words at Work is a global content marketing agency. It was started in 1988, so next year we will have been in business for 30 years. And over the course of that time, we've served many global brands in their marketing efforts. So companies like Entrust Data Card, Rico Digital Business Services and Printing Solutions, Calabrio Workforce Automation, and of course C.H. Robinson Global Logistics are just a few of the companies that we've worked with to manage and activate their global brands. We are a content-driven marketing agency with integrated services, and we help our clients create, grow, and protect brands all around the world. We have the most expertise in B2B marketing, and we use content as a driver in all things marketing strategy. We use content as a driver for brand and creative, as well as content as a driver for digital execution. So from a practitioner's perspective, my thoughts are largely going to be based on my B2B experience and brand application. And so with that, let's get started. You know, when we talk about how brands translate globally, we're really talking about how they show up and reflect their value in different regions of the world. You know, how they translate their meaning and their essence in local communities and local cultures far away from their roots and origins. You know, even the most global brands originated at some single point in some single geography, you know, possibly appealing to some single target audience. What I mean by that is, you know, take for example BMW, originated in Germany in the early 1900s, and it wasn't until years later that they were produced and for sale in other places of the world. UPS was founded in 1907 in Seattle, Washington, in the U.S., and it wasn't until the 1930s that they started to service deliveries to international markets. And the IKEA brand was founded in the 1940s in Sweden, and today their products are sold in almost 50 countries. So my point is that these brands and all global brands had to translate their meaning, their essence, their position, and their messages as they became more global. They had to evolve and adapt their brand of a single point of origin to a local brand of multiple points of destination. So global brands, they have to translate their value, their quality, and their personality to build this trust and confidence with both global and local buyers. So in essence, the most successful global brands have to translate themselves to local brands. They have to perform and produce globally and locally at the same time. So I want to talk a little bit about how successful global brands do that, how they translate to local brands and connect and build preference amongst those local buyers. And the first concept here, as we've been thinking about how global brands translate across these different regions, we found that there are brand elements that need to remain common and consistent in your strategy, as well as brand elements that need to evolve and be unique to regional and local communities. So what are the common connections and what are the unique differences that global brands have to address as they engage and deliver value to these regional and local customers? So if you would think holistically about your brand, you know, what are going to be the pillars that have to be common and consistent in your go-to-market approach, no matter where in the world your brand is showing up? So things like your strategy, your brand promise, what your brand value is, your brand as a thought leader in the marketplace, the intimacy and loyalty that your brand is going to hold with audiences and relationships, and that quality and that integrity and your overall global brand promise makes to customers all around the world in these different marketplaces. These are all things that no matter where your business or your brand shows up, they should be common and consistent as you build out the foundation of your strategy and your execution. These things should never really change in your global brand, and they shouldn't even change or be unique in local markets. They're always going to be consistent. They're going to support that confidence and trust that you're building with customers all around the world. And you know, as you're thinking about developing your brand strategy, your global brand strategy, and different ways to execute or activate your brand, you want to make sure that these items on this slide remain consistent in your go-to-market approach. So now I want to talk a little bit about, next slide, about how, you know, what should be and what can be unique as you're translating your brand around the world. You know, while global brand management encourages this consistency in the approach, it also requires the same amount of value and change and uniqueness to localization. So without that component of localization in your strategy, you're going to risk many things with your brand perception and with your local customers. So here are some things that you should consider distilling down or changing in your regional or your local go-to-market brand strategy. The first thing you're going to see is brand strategy, and you also saw that on the keep consistent slide. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that, but I'm going to move down the list even more. And you know, I don't think that it's really new or too revealing that your global brand must talk to and be relevant to local buyers, right? It's the essence of your brand language, aligning these local cultures. Your brand must present itself in the local language. It must be translated in that local language to maintain that credibility with those local buyers. If you don't do that, if you don't have that, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And one of the best ways to connect your global brand with local customers is to engage those customers and get their voice in your brand messaging. So we recommend going through a pretty rigorous process to interview local customers and reflect their needs, their voice, their language, and their challenges in your local brand messaging. Also, you know, if you think about brand value propositions, they don't always transfer one for one in their offering across the different regions of the world, right? Not all brands can offer the same products, the same services at the same level of quality in each region they serve. So because of that, you're going to have to change, evolve, or make unique the positioning of your brand to closely represent the value and the quality of the service that you can actually deliver in these specific regions, not necessarily what the brand leads with in other regions of the world. You know, in some regions, your brand might be the lowest cost. In others, it might be the highest quality. And yet in others, it might be the fastest or the most easily accessed. You know, the point here is that we need to make sure that your local positioning reflects the service or the product that you provide while still delivering on that overarching global brand promise. Your messaging and your visualization of communications for any specific region should reflect that position that your brand takes for those specific customers, and that really ladders up to your master brand promise, and you don't want to under deliver on that. So as a summary, if we can go to the next slide, these are the things when you're building out global brands, when you're translating your global brand into local markets. These are some things that you want to keep consistent, and these are some things that you want to make unique.
So Mark, looking at this slide here, it reads like the ingredients for a secret sauce for global brand success, really. This is obviously a list that you have put together based on your experiences over the years. Do you have any examples of, or maybe lessons learned of where this has worked well, or where these things haven't worked so well, that prompted you perhaps to put these items on a list, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. And maybe what I'll do is revisit that brand strategy. So that very top line where it says, hey, as you go to market, keep your brand strategy consistent. But when you get into localization, make unique your brand strategy if you have to. And the reason that that's in there is because all brands are on different journeys when it comes to levels of awareness, understanding, trust, preference, etc., in different parts of the world, right? So you may have, I have experience where I've managed brands that have had very, very high levels of awareness in certain markets or regions, and our brand strategy in those regions might be to drive deeper understanding of brand, or it might be to leverage brand as a thought leader to continue to evolve perception. It might be to leverage brand for demand or lead generation, while that same brand in a different market might lack awareness in a very big way, right? Maybe it's away from where it originated, and the brand strategy has to be more directed and aligned to building awareness of the brand versus understanding or preference or things like demand gen and whatnot. So, I've managed brands that have had different go-to-market strategies around the world, the same brand with different strategies based on the regional needs. And depending on what your goals are and how mature your brand is, that's going to dictate your strategy, right? High awareness in one area, low awareness in another. You're going to have different go-to-market strategies for those. So that's why it's okay that, we all want a consistent brand and brand strategy around the world, but it's okay to change and make unique if it's necessary in a certain market.
Right, okay. Great information, thank you.
Good. Okay, so now I want to shift gears a little bit and just talk about customers and how they have to be at the forefront of your global brand. Customers of different types and customers in different regions are going to engage differently with your global brand. They're going to engage differently with the messages that you're sending into the marketplace. Why is this? It's because customers' motivations are different. Some customers are going to like the cheapest product. Some are going to like the best quality or the fastest service. Some, and maybe a lot of customers, want the best combination of all those things. But your ability to understand your customers, build your brand around what they value, around their language, around their preference, that's going to determine the trust and confidence and overall success of your brand, both globally and locally. So for example, your global customers are going to be the easiest segment to engage with your global brand, right? Because these customers work for global organizations and they represent global brands themselves. So they're likely going to engage at the highest level of brand awareness and understanding. But regional customers, they're going to demand your brand translate, right, to reflect more specification for their region. They're going to demand that the brand has more attributes and it looks and feels and is translated into their region. They want a brand that knows their marketplace by language, by content, by visualization, and the delivery of that value with a great customer experience. And then yet local buyers, right? So we just went from global customers to regional customers. Local customers trust local brands. So you must make your global brand as local as possible to appeal to the nature of those buyers. And so how do you do that? Well, start by building a solid strategy that aligns with your business goals and covers the global and local aspects of your customers. Make sure that the global and local aspects of your brand are informed by customers. The voice of that customer, the voice of those collective customers is going to be important in your brand messaging, and it's going to be at the heart of how you build trust and confidence with those customers. And we're going to talk a little bit about messaging in a minute, but the voice of the customer is a key piece there. And then, of course, you also have to make sure that the visualization of your brand meets the expectations of the cultures and the communities that you're appealing to. So in the end, you need to make your brand relevant to customers based on their size, based on their location, based on their business needs.
And so when you mentioned visualization of your brand, that it meets the expectations of the cultures, do you have examples of what you mean by visualization in that context?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, take the logistics industry for example, and road transport providers. You know, trucks all around the world in different regions of the world are they look very different, right? A truck from North America or the U.S. does not look like a truck in Europe, which does not look like a truck in Asia, or possibly South America or Oceania. So you want to pay special attention, you know, to the imagery that you're using, the visualization that you're using when you're conveying messages and building and deploying creative in the local marketplaces. Food and beverage is another really good example when it comes to products, the naming of those products, the packaging of those products, even the shopping experience is different for customers all around the world. And you're going to have to adjust your visuals and your communications to make that connection with those local customers and build that local trust, that local confidence.
Sure. Great examples, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so I do want to talk briefly about how brands are impacting the customer buying journey, and how the buying journey has changed, and how successful global brands can accelerate higher margin sales and a lower sales cost by providing customers with more efficient connections to your brand throughout the purchase process. And the point on this slide really is that customers are buying products and services much differently today than they have even a few years ago. And this applies to buyers all around the world. You know, buyers were once, you know, in their process, 40 to 50%, about halfway through their purchase path, they started to engage vendors and started to have conversations about if those vendors were going to be had viable solutions for them. But today, buyers are almost 80% of the way down the buying path before they even engage a vendor. And these buyers, they are relying on innovative, informative, and compelling brands, as well as compelling content to get them further down that funnel. So if you go to the next, slide, you'll see then that as marketers, our global brands need to deliver this compelling content and translate value early on in the buying process. You know, why is that? Because customers are actively searching for solutions in the early stages of their buying process, and we need to meet them there. If we're not meeting them there, we're going to miss out on an opportunity, and we may never get engaged with those customers in that journey. You know, successful brands are going to deliver compelling content early in the buyer's journey, because what that does is that shifts the customer engagement from this old concept of prospecting to really like new levels of connecting with these buyers who need these solutions to solve their problems. And as they get further into the buying process, customers are going to be more open to early engagement with those who share commercial insights, evidence-based knowledge, thought leadership content. They'll drive a deeper level of brand understanding and engagement. And the conversations that you'll have with these customers will be much more strategic early on in the process. And then finally, you know, customers that are engaging with brands that are delivering compelling information, commercial insights, and evidence-based content, once they do get into the evaluation and the final purchase part of the journey, it happens very fast. And that's what speeds up the efficiency of the sales process. That's what lowers the cost of sale through the process. So, you know, with that, just make sure that you're aligning your brand with the buyer's journey, and that your brand is delivering strong content that reflects a compelling, smart, global, and local brand.
So what do we need to be doing differently now with content to allow for this change in the buyer journey?
Yeah, there are some things that are happening today that have been a bit of a shift and a change from the past, and let me cover a couple of those things. One is what I like to call short and long form content, right? You know, if 5 years ago or 10 years ago, when content marketing became a big strategy, the origins and the original deliveries there were the, you know, it was the king of the white papers, right? Long form content developed for engineers who want to engage and glean some insights and some value in a very long form. And then you have this rise of social media, of blogs, of video, and this is driving more short form content, right? So now marketers and brands have to deliver not just long form content, but they have to be engaged in delivering short form content as well. And you need to make sure that you're doing it all, because if you're just doing long form or you're just doing short form, you're not going to be meeting those customers where they need to be in the buyer's journey. The other thing I see going on is that content that was created in the past usually had an affinity and an association to the brand itself, right, to the identity of the organization. And there's a big shift going on now with personal brands and tying personalization to content more than ever today than in the past. So it's not just about the global brand and the reputation and identity of the company, it's the reputation and identity of the key opinion leader, right, of the expert, of the person, the personal brand that's tied to the content. And you know, these key opinion leaders, they're starting to provide content across many channels. In the past, you might have a key opinion leader doing some blogging. Well, today that blogger is now talking to like media outlets for public relation efforts and stuff like that. So these key opinion leaders are going much broader across channels and delivering their content in that way versus just single channel communications. Two other just quick pieces. You know, thought leadership content is a mandate by many customers all around the world, but customers are really also looking for, and I think this is a change, they're looking for deeper insights, and what I mean by that is commercial insights or evidence-based marketing that can help their business differentiate and help their business grow. And so, you know, one example of like a commercial insight is, you know, take Xerox Corporation, right? The technology solutions provider that also makes printing, right? How they're going to market, you know, they're not building content around their printing machine and the verticals that they serve with those printing machines. They're going into their verticals and their industries and their segments, and they're finding insights that their customers need, and they're building content around that. So for example, one of the large verticals for Xerox is education. And what they're doing is they've been able to go into schools, and instead of talking to the superintendents about buying their copiers, they're creating content and telling stories to superintendents like, did you know that kids learn 20% more and retain 20% more of color copy materials that they read versus black and white? And everybody wants their child to learn and retain more. So guess what? Xerox makes this unique color copy machine that can meet the needs of what everybody wants in impacting their children. So it's like those commercial insights are the stories that are being sought after and coming forward. And then this whole concept of evidence marketing. you take a vertical like healthcare or a vertical like supply chain. Really what this is saying is that you can produce your own content, and you should, because there's valuable insights that you can deliver to the market, but you should also be publishing and promoting other authorities on content, right? So whether those are third-party researchers, whether those are companies like Vistatec or whomever out there, find the authorities that are in the target markets and the target verticals that you're going after. And while you'll still continue to develop and deploy your own content, make sure that you're promoting, publishing, and aligning to other authorities to build trust and credibility with your content. And I think just a real quick note on the last thing is you're seeing a big shift now in not just the content itself, but the platforms in which content is engaged, right? And you know, the internet, web apps or mobile apps, these are all going to evolve to these things called chatbots, right? These machines that are learning artificial intelligence and being able to respond to questions. And it's going to be, in the future, it's going to be a conversation with a machine to get your content versus you going to a website, downloading a white paper, and gleaning your insights that way. So there are some thoughts, I guess, to that question.
Yeah, some thought leadership there too, I think, Mark.
Great.
Okay, great.
So yeah, let's talk. Let's talk a little bit about messaging and how messaging plays a role in successful brand programs. So we've already discussed about how global brand language and visualization needs to speak to local customers. And while it's doing that, it also has to deliver this universal brand experience and promise, right? And one important tool that we believe everybody should have is what we call a brand key messaging document. And this document serves as like a guide to deliver the consistent and compelling story of your brand. Foundational key messaging and positioning content should drive the brand consistency of your overarching and your regional communications, right? So you're going to have a master brand key messaging document. You're also going to probably have some regional key messaging documents that are evolving, changing, and making unique those parts of your brand for those regions and those customers. And the tools, you know, this key messaging document, a tool like this is really going to help you clarify your brand, and it's really going to help you clearly articulate your value. So you're not creating stuff from a whiteboard every single time you build a piece of content or communication. You're building a foundation and a brand empire, and you're using this key messaging document and messaging pillars to drive your story, the consistency of your story, the meaning of your brand into the marketplace. It's an attempt at documenting why you do what you do, why you're so passionate about what you do, and really what is your overall value. You know, remember, customers are buying brands with passion. You know, those that exude why you do what you do and what you believe in. Customers, they're not really buying the what or the how. You know, what you do and how you do it, everybody has a story for that. But why you do what you do, the things that you're passionate about, what you believe in, that's what customers are really buying. So once you've established, you know, your key message, your brand key messaging, make sure to align it with your hierarchy, your brand hierarchy, and your architecture, and that's going to marry up the messaging and the parts of the visualization. And if you jump to the next slide, here's just a list of things that you're going to find in a key messaging document. And I'm not going to go through all of them. But I do want you to make note that, you know, creating brand messaging and delivering global brands all over the world takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of research to inform a strategic document like this. You're going to spend a lot of time segmenting customers, creating personas. You're going to be keying in on commonly used language across customer segments. You're going to be keying in on customer attributes that your brand has to reflect, not just globally, but also locally. You're going to be prioritizing your messages, right? You're going to get 3 primary messages, and you're going to get 3 secondary messages, and you're going to drive those messages into the marketplace, transferring your brand into the meaning of what your brand stands for and the promise that it delivers. And you're going to do this globally and locally, right? So you're going to use this messaging document to maintain consistency and conciseness, but you're also going to use it to drive clarity and that compelling story to that compelling story of the why to the marketplace. This document's going to be the foundation where you're going to get all your creative and all your content marketing, right? A key messaging document is a pretty literal document, and it helps marketers then create. You use that as a foundation, and then you transfer, create, evolve, and grow your visual creative, your content marketing. You're going to transpose those literal brand messages to creative communications for your customers and your prospects.
And I can see the huge value that brings to a global marketing operation, but also when it comes to translating content globally, that kind of a document would be really, really beneficial, add a huge amount of value to translators as they try to understand the essence of the brand. So yeah, I'm going to go looking for that for every new customer we onboard. Hopefully they have something similar.
Yeah, and maybe just a comment on approach for that, right? Like, well, how do you create a brand key messaging document? This will be a more simple explanation of it, but start internally, right? Start internal with your sales teams, with your business leaders, with your account managers who have these touches with the marketplace and with your customers, and glean information from them. There's a lot of questions you can ask them about what they think customers are looking for, about what they think about how customers talk, about what they think customer challenges or pain points are. Get all that information from your own internal teams and then test that data with the customers. So this is where you go in and you talk to customers and you ask them things that your salespeople have told you, things that your business leaders have told you. And our experience has been is a lot of times how customers talk, the words that they use, the environments that they live in, and the challenges they have, they're not always reflected that accurately by sales teams or account managers or business leaders. And when you think about marketing, branding, and how you drive your content across channels in the marketplace, it's kind of a one-way conversation, except for platforms like social media, blogging, etc. And so you want that customer, if they got to your website and they start engaging in content that sounds like they talk, that uses words and phrases that they use, that appeals and empathizes with the challenges and pain points that they have, when they see that, they start to think, oh, that this brand is pretty smart, and it feels like they may have solutions that I'm looking for. Now, a salesperson or a business leader, they get to have that conversation with the customer. So a customer will lead them through the conversation, but in marketing, we need to appear as smart and intelligent as we can, and the best way to do that is testing your internal voice against your customer voice, and then in the end, the customer voice always wins in marketing and branding because of that one-way conversation. You have to sound like your customer, not like your own sales team.
Absolutely, great advice. I think I'm probably asking a lot of questions here, so I think I'll, and I know some people want to ask questions at the end, and just for everyone listening, if we don't get time for the questions at the end, we will certainly circle back with you on that. I know, Mark, you had some more content there for us. We might just keep going now on to your next item.
Yeah, and I will. I'll try to go through these a little bit faster than the past, so maybe we can get to those questions. So the ending of the presentation is all around looking at different approaches to not just managing a global brand, but how do you manage or structure a global marketing operation. There's many different models you can employ, and each model comes with different advantages and disadvantages. And so this first model is kind of a centralized model, right? This is where all brand operations are managed from a single location, and it's one team working together at one location to deliver the global brand. And some of the advantages of this model are, the team working on the brand, they have a lot of knowledge. The communications, the visibility, to the strategy, to the execution, it's easier, it's more efficient. Sharing of information and delivering your brand across channels is more succinct, and it leaves little room for gaps. Everybody's working in the same time zone, so meeting and scheduling are easier. And the big point here is ultimately it gives you the most control over your brand management, right? The centralized model supports the utmost consistency in delivering your brand to the market, and that's a very important factor for global brand management. On the flip side, though, it does expose you to the risk of not being in touch with the local marketplace and local customers, and we've talked about how important that is. Just even simply by not having boots on the ground, it exposes you to not having these keen insights of the local marketplace. And those marketplaces in today's world, they change fast. The centralized approach gives you a little bit less flexibility and probably more risk in sacrificing that marketplace intelligence. So it's probably worth noting that customers will pick up on that no local presence model. That might hurt your brand perception or reputation. And certainly if you have a local sales force, you're going to be at a distance there. Now, between the advantages and disadvantages, of course, there are strategies to address the disadvantages. Outsourcing to local agency partners within the region, though there's definitely solutions there. Just know that it's going to take time to manage that process. And then if you jump to the next slide, this is it's the adverse of centralized. This is a decentralized model, right? That your brand and your operations are managed from multiple locations. There's multiple teams working across many locations to deliver your brand more locally. And the big advantages of this model are that ultimately you have the highest connectivity to the local marketplace and to your local customers, right? This is going to exude your local leadership and the connection with those local customers. You're going to have immediate knowledge of changes to the local marketplace. Your intel is going to be high. Customers are going to perceive that. They're going to recognize that. They're going to value that. You're going to have great flexibility, and you're going to be tightly tied to your sales force. The disadvantage of the decentralized model is that you're going to have this risk of not having this consistent brand across different regions and markets. Independent teams can sometimes lack that collaboration and direction. An inconsistent brand image or reputation could hurt you with your global customers, right? These people are looking for consistent brand experience no matter where in the world they're engaging your brand. So this decentralized model, it can be less clear, it can be less compelling in certain customer segments. You definitely lose some control over your brand. Your communications and your team and that visibility is going to be less, and that might hurt team engagement. Sharing of information can be more difficult. Everybody's not working in the same time zone, so meetings and sharing of data can be difficult. And again, like the centralized approach, there are strategies to address these disadvantages of the decentralized model. I mean, you could do more frequent brand audits by a marketing control tower or a third-party outsource provider that could come in and assess your brand all over the world to make sure that there's some consistency. But again, that takes time and effort. And then in closing, for the last slide, there's this concept of the hybrid model. And this hybrid model combines really the best of the centralized and the decentralized model. And it suggests that you've kind of got this core centralized group like a marketing control tower, and that is connected to satellite or smaller decentralized teams. That there are multiple teams working across multiple locations, but they're acting like one single group, like one global marketing team. So you're going to have this bigger, sizable, single location, single group that manages the global brand, but they're going to be communicating and collaborating with these small teams and regions to deliver the brand seamlessly, to deliver the brand consistently, and drive that connection with the local customers. You know, the advantages of the hybrid model is it really empowers the regional brand managers to deliver those unique traits that your brand needs to meet the local culture and local customer requirements. But it also, as they do that, it's going to keep consistent the essence, the value, and the promise of the global brand. So it supports many of the advantages of both the centralized and decentralized models. Things like flexibility, connectivity, marketplace intel, brand consistency, customer outreach, big advantages in this hybrid model. But at the same time, there are some watchouts, right? So team knowledge and visibility will always be a watchout. Sharing of information and deploying your brand across channels, you remember they're going to be different. So that's got to be a watch out. Everybody's still not working in the same time zone, so there's some difficulties around collaboration and sharing data. And probably one of the biggest things that I've always thought about, focused on as a global marketing leader, is that when you have these regional teams around the world, there's less of a need for training and developing true global marketers, because the local teams satisfy the brand and the marketing needs, right? So I don't need a bunch of smart global people in the marketing control tower. I just take care of everything locally. So if you want to train your teams to be truly global in their marketing and brand approach, you're going to have to put in some other programs in this hybrid model to cross-train and develop acumen in other regions and local markets. And I've had experience with these different management and operation models. I do believe the hybrid model that also uses and leverages outsource relationships region by region, it makes the most sense. I do believe it delivers the best strategy, experience, and execution to customers all over the world.
Absolutely. And aside from that, do you see one model being better than another model in different, say, industries or B2B or B2C?
Yeah, I would say that I'm seeing more and more of B2B organizations shift to a hybrid model, and they're doing that for the advantages and the reasons that I had mentioned. But I would say that probably, in the B2C, it could still be very decentralized, and products that are being sold on shelves and through retail outlets and whatnot are probably still benefiting from that decentralized model. So yeah, I'd probably say I see a lot of B2B companies rethinking their operational structure. I do think it's cyclical as well. People go centralized for a decade, then they change to decentralized for a decade, then they go back to centralized.
Okay.
So I think the hybrid model might provide some more longevity in a successful global operation.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think, Mark, that brings us to the end of your comments for the moment. Many thanks for providing us with these absolutely fantastic insights. Key takeaways for me have been: know what needs to be kept globally consistent and locally unique. Put the customer at the forefront of your brand management program. Have a brand key messaging document, and understand the pros and cons of the centralized versus decentralized versus hybrid model of management, and other areas that are hugely important is knowing that you need short and long-term, long-form content, thought leadership, evidence-based thought leadership, etc. So fantastic insights, Mark. Thank you so much for all of this. Simon, over to you. Did you have any questions from our listeners today?
We do, definitely. We have quite a few questions, actually. I'm not sure we're going to get through them all, but maybe I can start with a question here from Shelley, and Shelley's made just an observation as well around the fact that what would have been helpful as well is maybe some very pragmatic examples as we were going through, and maybe that's something we can consider for a future webinar, just to help illustrate some of the points. But the key question from Shelley, first of all, is that it goes back to earlier in the presentation, Mark, and it was really around brand messaging. And Shelley comments that brand messaging is important, but raises the question that don't marketeers have to strategically account for this dynamic, organic, interactive, two-way nature of digital branding today, or digital brands today, sorry. So whereas we were talking earlier maybe around the local and global and the overarching strategy of the brand messaging, but Shelley's point really is that marketers today have to strategically account for that dynamic, organic, interactive, two-way nature of digital brands today. Maybe you could just reflect on that, maybe give us your thoughts on that.
For me or Aoife?
Sorry, I think that was for you, Mark. I think it was specifically for one of the topics earlier.
Sure. Yes, I absolutely think today's marketeers have to be accountable for the digital marketplace. We didn't talk, I mentioned a little bit of how the Internet of Things is changing the way that we deliver content and the types of content that we need to create and align with our brands. And these are the chat bots, right? And I think everybody knows the Internet is 20 years old. Big data scientists are categorizing that 20 years of data into big buckets by topics like finance, healthcare, food and beverage, transportation, education. And that information is being fed into machines, and the artificial intelligence of those machines are understanding the human language at greater speeds, and they're able to speed up and become much more efficient in these two-way conversations. So I don't think it's just the old two-way conversation of a salesperson and a company. It's technology-driven content, technology driven interactions. And just for a pragmatic example to help Shelley, this won't necessarily well, I guess it does tie to digitally. In marketing around the world, it's important that marketeers understand not just the voice of the local customer, but how communications are regulated and managed region to region, continent to continent, right? And the reason I say that is, at one point in my career, we had a global website, right? And it represented all regions of the world. And we used to put up our local office's manager's name and phone number on our website. And we had a situation in South America, and the South American website, where we had a manager leave, but we failed to remove his name from the website. And we had some liability to that, and we had to take care of that situation. And one of the things that we thought about strategically was, well, let's just take away all of the manager names and numbers to our local offices, and then we won't have that problem. So we proceeded off to do that as a global marketing team. And just as soon as we took those names down, I got a call from my leader in Europe saying, hey, there's actually laws in Europe that in some areas you have to have a office manager name and number on the website. Please put them all back. So that kind of accountability is in the communications, but it's also in the management of digital platforms, like the internet. And I do think that with social media, with this big push on personal branding, that the two-way communication with content and marketing is going to really drive, to Shelley's point, even more accountability for marketeers in the future. I also would say, however, you will perform better having strategy underneath these two-way conversations and having something like a messaging document or content pillars that can drive the stories you want to tell. Otherwise, you'll be very exposed and very unaccountable.
Thank you, Shelley. I hope that answers some of the question. Of course, we'll be happy to carry on that conversation after the webinar. Just moving on to another question in the interest of time, Mark and Aoife. Just carrying on there, I suppose you mentioned AI there, and one of the things that's come up a lot in terms of comments and questions is around chatbots, machine learning, artificial intelligence. And it relates back to the diagram you put up, Mark, when you were talking about the funnel and the compelling content needed to be earlier in the funnel. And the question is really around, with the rise of AI, the rise of the machines, if everybody is able to create this compelling content faster, does that then mean everybody just gets better at the same time? Or, you know, what does the future look like when AI is having such an impact in terms of this compelling content being produced quicker, faster, more efficiently that you were touching on earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I can share a few thoughts, and Aoife, you can jump in after. I mean, the concept of the machines stepping in to interact with us as humans is exactly what we did, what we talked about, to make things faster and more efficient. So, you know, pragmatic example: you're at the airport and your flight gets canceled. What do you have to do? You know, 40 people stand in a line to talk to an agent to get reassigned a flight, and it takes you an hour or two to get down to the next gate to get the next flight. You know, in the future, what will happen is, you know, your phone will be telling you, or a friendly chatbot will be telling you, your flight got canceled and you are rescheduled on this flight at this time at this gate. And you now have 2 hours back, you know, in your time. So that's a more maybe technical example of how, you know, some technical content of a process that exists today that the AI and the chatbots and the machines are going to handle for us. We won't need that ticketing agent for that actual duty anymore. And just to answer, you know, the marketing content questions, no, I don't think it's going to be as easy as, well, if we all just create a bunch of content and we all just use, you know, chatbots to deliver it, does that make us all equal? Absolutely not. And I would point back to the concept of delivering commercial insights and evidence-based content. Those are not easy things to do. That Xerox example that I gave, that maybe took 9 to 12 to 14 months to figure that out. And it's difficult because you have to research and research and research and research to find these unique traits and to find these unique insights to bring back to your customers and to build your content on. So the, you know, brands and marketers that are spending a lot of time with their customers, a lot of time in the marketplace, a lot of time with research and thinking differently about your value props. It's not about the copier makes color. It's about kids learn and retain more. And those are two very, very different stories. The brands that are able to reflect those kind of insights and that kind of evidence, they're technology agnostic. They're going to be the winners in the market.
You've kind of part answered the next piece, actually, and it's around customers looking for deeper insights to help their business grow. I think was the quote that you mentioned earlier. And Aoife as well, you know, focusing on the voice of the customer. You shared there, you mentioned research in your last, it takes time. But have you any tips in terms of really driving down to those deeper insights for brands that are looking to grow globally, successfully, or to expand into new markets? Like, how do they really get to those deep insights? Have you any tips there, Mark, from your experiences, or Aoife, or Vistatec perspective?
Yeah, I'll just leave you with the you know, the single most important one. Spend time with your customers. So you know, spend time formulating the types of questions that you want to ask them, and you know, not for this webinar, but there's lists or there's resources that can help you develop the right questions to ask. So I would say qualitative research. You know, quantitative research is good as well, and it has its place. But I'm a proponent of qualitative research, where you're sitting across from a customer, or you're on the phone with the customer, and you're talking and having a conversation, gleaning their thoughts and insights. And what happens, Simon, is, you know, by the time you've talked to 10 different customers, or 15 different customers, or 20 different customers, you start hearing some common themes. Right? They all live in their own worlds. Every customer thinks that they're unique and believes that they are unique, and they are to a certain extent. But there is a point of overlap and a point of crossover that you're gonna, in these conversations with your customers, you're gonna hear something and you're gonna go, hey, I've heard that 4 or 5 other times from other customers. That's an insight. Let me dig deeper there. Let's create a piece of content on that topic. And lots of times these customers don't talk together, right? Sometimes they're, you know, if they're in the same vertical or in the same industry, there might be a association events and things like that where they do get to share their pain points and whatnot. But otherwise, companies are independent, they're unique, they're trying to grow with their customers, and they don't always talk with each other. So you, as that middle person, right, that marketer that is hearing from many, you have that opportunity to find what's common, and that's not readily available to every marketer out there. That doesn't get replicated over and over and over again by every marketer trying to take their brand to market. And your brand could come off looking very smart, very global, very local, by speaking with enough customers to find some of that common stuff between them all, and then build your brand, build your strategy, build content, you know, based on that.
Thank you, Mark. Aoife, I suppose from a Vistatec perspective, you're in the business every day of, you know, delivering on outcomes for your global brands around the world. When it comes to gleaning those insights, is there anything you want to add from a Vistatec perspective?
Yeah, I suppose we'd be looking at it from the locally unique side of things. So what we see working quite well and what our customers are asking us for is access to local bloggers, for example, in the travel industry. So writing local blogs, possibly in local markets about local areas. And they would have the insights, so they're best placed to write, and they will write with perhaps creative briefs or with some kind of branding guidelines, but that's very much on the local level. What we also see a lot is where they will, again, and it speaks to the thought leadership side of things, is where you would have local personalities, perhaps we'll say for cameras or whatever. You might have a local well-known photographer writing in their own language about a particular camera, a new digital camera in a particular area. Sometimes we see that having more global success. It might be somebody in France, very famous French photographer, talking about a particular camera, taking some photographs, and sometimes that gets put out into the more global market. But definitely is the focus there would be locally unique and thought leadership married with locally unique content.
Thank you, Aoife. So, Mark, Aoife, I think we're going to have to end the Q&A part of the webinar there. We do have a number of other questions, and for anybody who has sent us a question and we haven't managed to get to you, we will follow up after this webinar with you. I'd like to thank everybody who has asked questions today, and obviously to thank Mark and Aoife for their insights today on global branding. I do hope that everybody who's joined us here live, or if you're listening to this on a recording, we thank you for your interest in today's webinar on global branding, and we really hope that today's topics have been of help to you. Keep an eye on all the social media channels from Vistatec, and of course from Words at Work, for more information and more events and webinars that will be coming down the line soon. So Mark, Aoife, over to you to say the goodbyes. Thank you everybody for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you from me. Have a good afternoon.